David, welcome to Sub 2 Stories, Tales of a Real Estate Investor. So, we've never met. We've chased each other around on Facebook a little bit, but I think we should just jump right into this. And the way that I like to structure this, because I think it's the most exciting way to structure things, because it's been done this way a million times, is just like a book or a movie. And I start this every podcast out the same way. When you're reading a book or a movie, where does it start? Doesn't start at the beginning. It doesn't start at the end. It just drops you into some random story of excitement or despair or whatever. So that's where I want you to take us to the thing in your life, whether it was before real estate or it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Just drop us in there, man. Good, bad, or just, this is your story. So I want to hear it.
All right. So I'll start from the beginning. How about that? So born in Arkansas, grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota for 10 years. When I was 15, moved to North Carolina. Parents were tired of shoveling the driveway, and they wanted to be entrepreneurs. And and so it sounded really good, right? And so the parents are trying to get out of their day jobs, and they're going to start a business. And then that one failed. And then the next one failed. And then the next one failed. And they're like, okay, I got to go back. I'm going to go back and get a job. Right. And so but always been very active, very involved in athletics. I was a swimmer in high school and in college. I swam Division I. I was a distance guy. So 500,000 and 1650, and loved it. In college, I started selling Cutco kitchen knives for Vector Marketing, was one of the top sales guys in the country, ended up being assistant manager, branch manager, and then didn't want all the chaos and like the churn and all that stuff, right? But I learned how to sell. So I majored in marketing as an undergrad, got out, and then went to a variety of different smaller companies as the miracle sales guy that can save the company. And that never works, right? And then in 2006, went back to get my MBA, or I guess in 2005, got my MBA from Wake Forest in order to really change and switch the career path from being a sales guy to be able to impact and solve big problems in the company. Give me the biggest, hardest, most complex problem that no one else can solve, and I'm going to jump in and do it. Did that for several different, kind of went project to project almost. Build the system, fix it, train the new people, and then hand it off, expecting that next project. And they're like, okay, thanks, David. See you later, right? And I went to another company and did the same thing. Got involved in several different really big projects, like creating big databases and pulling data out of ERP systems and putting it in Excel, and then systematize it with big software and implement that across like all the locations around the world. The last 10 years I've been at Wells Fargo in their credit bureau space, initially building software, but then also I was the product owner for, every consumer loan that goes out to the credit bureaus. So we're talking tens of millions of accounts. So all the data, the controls, the systems, like everything that you have to do to make sure everything is accurate, timely, all those things. And it's exactly right. The analytics side, the dashboards. Fast forward about 4.5, 5 years ago, after 20 years, God finally said, yes, it's time to get into real estate. And he spoke from all these different directions. And I was like, okay, God, I got it. Like, it's time to go in real estate. What does that look like? So I went to do this little weekend, or like a one-night training, which turned into a weekend and another weekend. Anyways, after a month or 2 months, I'm $25,000 into this training thing. and really learned the basic foundations of how to wholesale, how to value a property, how to just get your feet wet, sign up for their mentorship and the training and all the extra add-on stuff. And my coach did not know the nuts and bolts of how to actually execute a deal. I was like, dude, you're in real estate. I hired you as my coach to show me how to do this. I've got this house under contract. Like, in how much insurance do I put on it? He's like, go talk to your insurance agent. And I said, well, come on. My insurance agent is biased. You're the expert. Like, as an investor, tell me, how much do I put on this house? Like, what insurance is important? He's like, David, like, you're asking me all these detailed questions. I'm not supposed to tell you that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I thought you were supposed to like guide me. I'm paying you to. So anyways, we parted ways soon after that. But one of the big things I learned, and he said, was think about a brick wall. Every brick is a different detail. It's a different thing that you have to figure out to make a real estate deal work. And it really kind of made me step back and said, holy smokes, there are a million little details. Is the insurance? How do you track it? How do you communicate with this or that person? What are the limits that you're supposed to do? Set up the bank account, set up the this and that. And how do you manage a subcontractor and a remodeling company and a general contractor? And when do you need to pull a permit or not? And right, how do you hire this or that person and a bookkeeper and the software and the banking? Right, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. I said, okay, so there's got to be a better way to do this. But at the same time, I'm like, let's take action. So I'm taking action. And I've always been a big saver, right? In high school, I got my Eagle Scout, and my grandparents gave me $1,000. Unlike most high school seniors, I did not go spend it, right? And so I met with the local stockbroker guy and gave him the $1,000, and we invested in whatever mutual fund, right? I'm like, okay, I'm investing. We're going to start growing this. I'm projecting future cash flow and all this stuff, right? So fast forward 20 years, right? I've got $200,000 I've saved up, and now I liquidate almost everything. And we go buy a house for $87,000 in cash. And we're going to do a delayed mortgage on it. We fix it up. I think we put $13,000 in, I mean, a very light remodel. But at the same time, I mean, there's some stuff, there are some reasons why we were getting a decent discount on it. It praised for $125,000. After that, did the delayed mortgage on it, and we got $100,000 back.
Whoa. I'm
now in the deal for $0. And it may have been like $1,500. I mean, it was almost $0. 30-year mortgage on it. Amazing. And we're making $300 in positive cash flow after 8%.
Wow.
Book like a property management fee and some money that's accrued for maintenance and this and that, right? Let's do it again. So we bought the first house in October. We bought the second house in December. That one actually cost $200,000. So I was literally scraping the pennies and the coins out of the couch cushions. And we maxed out every credit card, every line of credit. We pulled money out of everywhere. And we're like within $100 of being able to buy this house. Like, and we buy the house. And we did the same thing. This one only needed a couple $1,000s. It was almost ready to go. Right next to the local college or university in town. It was 5 bedrooms. We converted the dining room into a 6-bedroom, a 2-bathroom, like 3,600 square feet, right? It's this huge place. right next to college. We put college students in there. Again, delayed mortgage, put a 30-year mortgage on it, and we're making $400, $500 a month after property management and all this stuff. Let's do it again, right? We get all of our cash back out again. Except on that one, I learned a huge thing. The basement square footage does not appraise for the same as above square footage. And we had $40,000 stuck in that house as a result.
Oh, no.
Really big, important thing, right? We're all making mistakes. But my goal is that we're going to make a different mistake today and tomorrow than what we made yesterday. Mistakes are great. I love to make mistakes, unless I can avoid them. Right? And let's just
Amazing.
Amazing. So then we went and bought another house. We bought a third house in like March, April. So now I've got 3 houses. Now my property manager comes to me because we hired out the property management. Because I was like, I can only learn so much.
Yeah.
So the property manager, and I'm like back and forth with this property manager, and they've got all this experience in town, and they're supposed to be great. And I'm going in to check on my babies, right? My little rental houses. I'm just learning how to do this thing. And I'm like, hey, what's the deal? Why is it empty? Or why is this room vacant? Or we need to go check on this, or that I think the tenants are having a party tonight, right? All these different like little weird things. And so then they came to me one day, and I'm like escalating and putting more and more pressure on them. And they came to me and said, David, we found this new law in our city. It's from the 1800s. It's this old law, and it says if you have more than 4 or 5 people living in the same house that are not related, and you're renting the house by the room, which we were, it's considered a halfway house. And we're not willing to do that. You can have the property back. Good luck. And I was like, what do you mean? In 1 week, now I have to figure out how to be a property manager.
Nice.
And I'd already interviewed a bunch of all these property managers. And I was like, this is the one that's the good one. Okay, I guess I'm going to start my own property management company.
Nice.
So we just figure it out, right? Everything is figure outable.
Amazing.
And then, all right, do you want me to keep on going, or do you want to?
No, I want to reflect back a little bit, right? So you
Right.
gave so much information to this story so far, and I want to come back to the beginning a little bit, and because I think like the beginning of your story, like you led with your parents being entrepreneurs, and you left me hanging on their failure. And you just blasted right by it.
I did.
Like, how old were you when this all was happening with them?
I was in high school.
Okay, so in high school, they're like, David, you're in high school. You've seen us work a bajillion hours a week. We're done with it. We're going to start our own business.
Yep.
What businesses did they start?
Yeah, so when we moved to Hickory, North Carolina,
Okay.
Didn't know anyone here. They literally like flew down and drove across the state, interviewing town by town by town by town. And they talked to all these different people, right? They're talking to the police and the school system and the Chamber of Commerce and the people at the restaurants. And they're literally like interviewing town by town. And anyways, they settled on Hickory, North Carolina.
Okay.
And they bought a franchise for TV Facts Family Magazine. It was a TV guide, right? So think back in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And so it's a TV guide. You can pick it up for free. They put all these locations and gas stations, all over the place. And they're selling advertising. Never sold advertising in their life. They're like, this is going to be great. They bought this franchise because it was one of the cheaper franchises that they could buy. And they're just trying to make it happen. And it did not work. Because they were learning how to sell advertising.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And at the same time, like, digital stuff is coming out, and digital TV guides and digital, like, the TV viewing experiences evolve too. But they failed in a year and a half, 2 years. Like, they just kept pouring and pouring. Like, how do we twist it? How do we change it? How do we figure it, like, go better? And they added, like, just fun games and interactive this and that, and find this picture or this particular thing, like, somewhere in the magazine, and send your stuff in. And anyways, they tried really hard, and they did a really good job. As long as you're not looking at the financial numbers. So then eventually they shut that one down, and they're like, man, we see this for sale by owner car lot. And we saw one, and it's outside Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're going to build one here. That year, I did an exchange program up to the University of Minnesota, and I was in an entrepreneurship class. And they said, provide a business plan. Right. So this is a car lot that anyone can put their cars on. You want to sell your car. You don't want to go and put your personal address. You want people to, like, come to this central location to meet, right, for safety or for whatever reason. And then they charge $35 or something like that per week to put your car in the lot.
Nice.
That's kind of a neat thing. And so they rented this space in, like, the car lot area, except they weren't in the high dollar area. They're almost on the other side of the train tracks, right? They're down in the bad part of town, a mile from the main car lot area, because that's where they could afford. And they're in between the two strip clubs, like, in the low income part of town. And they're, anyways, location, right? And it failed horribly. But they put their heart and soul into it for a year or a year and a half or whatever it was. And of course, my entrepreneurship class, I'm telling the class, hey, check out this idea. Isn't this great? And the professor's like, that's a terrible idea. Never do that. It's terrible. It's never going to work.
Oh, no.
And my parents went, la, 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 la. I'm not listening. We're still going forward with it just because we believe in it. And they may have done something else too.
That's quite an incredible story.
Everything is right. All right, we're gonna go back and get a job.
So you were in exchange in Minnesota and a college and an entrepreneurial program, and you, like, a year or two before, saw your parents move, or you moved with them to Hickory, North Carolina, and they were like, we're going to do this whole other thing. And you firsthand are partaking in this TV guide selling business. I'm guessing you were a part of this, right? You weren't just, like, staying home, fiddling around while they were out working, right? I was
doing a little bit, but they were working from home. We had an office in the house.
So you're getting this, like, incredible firsthand experience of entrepreneurship, and it failed. And then it happened again, but this time you were at college, and your college professor was like, 2 thumbs down. And you were like, Mom and Dad, you know that place you're paying me to go? They said your idea is no bueno. And your parents were like, I don't want to hear it. I don't believe them. I don't care. I'm doing it because I'm just doing it. So my question to you is, what aspects of that, or like in what way did that experience of watching your parents fail affect you like today? Like what did you take away from that? Because to me, that's like that is the core of David right there in your experience, because you went on to be the highest salesperson at Cutco, and then you went to school at Wake Forest and you were solving problems for huge companies, and then you went to Wells Fargo to just be the chaos solver. And like that experience you had with them, man, just tell me, like, what did that do to shape you?
Yeah, I think another big thing though was after getting out of undergrad, my parents, again, like there's still that entrepreneur like thing inside of them, right? And so they end up grandparents had passed away. They left some money, and so my parents bought into this t-shirt screen printing and embroidery
In
business.
like 1999, right? 2000.
Yeah, right around there.
Yep. I remember that.
And it was like, hey, this is really cool. And I graduate from undergrad in 2001 and 2002, 3 kind of time frame. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna move back to Hickory. I need a job. My dad's like, man, we got this t-shirt business. I'm now a 10% owner of, or whatever it was. And so I'm the sales, I'm a second salesperson for them now. And then I see all this inheritance. I mean, it was like almost $500,000, right? All of a sudden, my parents now have this chunk of money again, and then lose all of it into this screen printing and embroidery company. All of it. Now they paid off their house, right? So they're living debt free, and right, that's amazing. But then they've got sunk cost bias, and the ship's going down, and they're like, but we've already got 200,000 in. We're gonna have to shut the whole company down and all 10 employees or whatever. It's just another 100 grand this month, and that'll really save all this stuff. And then the next month it was another 50 grand, and then the next month after that is another 20 or 50 grand, and then the month after, right? And it's like, okay, we got to stop. And it wasn't until like the sunk cost bias was so strong. It wasn't until there's no more money that we actually say, I'm going to stop investing in this thing that.
Okay. All right.
Right. And so now, like, I learned the importance of contribution margin. And like now I'm in MBA school, and they're talking about contribution margin. I'm like, holy cow, like that's the thing that we should have had at the t-shirt business. Because we would do stuff like, my numbers are going to be off, right? This was 20 years ago, but we need $700 a day in production revenue to cover all of our costs. So if we do not have $700 in margin in orders, then we're gonna let the 3 or 4 people that are running the t-shirt and embroidery, like the screen, like they're actually in the back doing the work. We're gonna let them go home, and we're gonna produce zero because we're not meeting the $700. That sounds reasonable, but the reality is that we did not cut off all of our fixed costs. We're still paying the accountant. We're still paying the mortgage or the rent. We're paying the insurance. We're paying, right, all these other things. So it's not that goes to zero. The reality is that if we had generated some income, right, because those are people that were making minimum wage or $10 an hour or whatever, right? So the actual cost was like $300 a day for that labor. So as long as we covered that like those people's labor, we had anything above $300 went towards the fixed cost overhead, including profit, right? And so we made a huge mistake by saying, sure, you guys can go home and we're just going to save on that labor, because our fixed cost overhead was more than, like, it was over 50% of our total cost.
Mm.
And so instead of having $300 to contribute towards fixed cost overhead, we contributed zero. And then those people that did a great job swinging the hammer or like doing their craft, and they're the actual producers. Now it's week after week and month after month after month. And then we're letting them go home on a regular basis and saying, hey, I'm sorry, we don't have work for you. And then we get a bunch of orders and we're like, hey, by the way, you have to stay extra. Right. And it's just like this big balance of I don't know from day to day to day, right? From their perspective, am I gonna have a job tomorrow? Am I gonna have to stay late and make overtime? How do I control like my own financial budget? And like the company just started to erode from the inside. And we were doing things like factoring the invoices, right? So a customer would hire us to do the job, and before we even produced that job and sent it out, we would invoice the customer and we would send it over to this finance company, and they would take out 1.5%. And then they go ahead and give us our money for the 98.5%.
So like a payday advance type of situation?
Exactly.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that means that we're paying at least 18% interest a year. A lot of times, if that customer would have paid us a week from now, like when we produced their order and they were going to pay that day, we just wasted all that. It sounds like a small amount, right? 1.5%. But when you're already on a small margin and then you've got all this debt service, and then, I mean,
Yeah.
the math just all of a sudden, if you take a step back and really look at it from the big picture, it does not make sense.
Are you able to thank your parents for that experience? Because I can just see what they had done and all that they brought you through, and then they sent you to school, and now you're armed with all of this information of the mistakes that they made. And I know from the 40 minutes that we've been talking, you will never make that mistake. You have seen that mistake and you will never make that again. So like, if you haven't or you can't, go do it in whatever way you can. Go thank them. That's incredible.
Absolutely. Bill, thank you. I will make sure I do that. I've done it in the past, but I'll be really intentional about that. Thank you.
Yeah, because I mean, from like their perspective, they may be like, "Wow, that was great," but I don't know. There could be some like resentment to their life, but like, man, they gave you something that they never had. So like, I'm not a parent, but that's what my parents always tell me. Like, I want to give you more than I ever had, and they did that for you. So that's amazing.
It is.
Okay, so you got all this experience from your parents, which is great. Wake Forest, Wells Fargo, you took so your $1,000 that you got from Eagle Scout, that was in high school?
Yep.
Was that before or after you moved to Hickory?
It was after.
Did you put that money into
high school?
You got that money in freshman?
Getting ready to graduate.
Did you put that money into the mutual fund because you saw how your parents had spent their money and you were like, I'm putting that someplace safe? Or is that just you in general? Like you were just like, I want to do this because I read some information and this is where I want to put it.
Oh, that's a really cool question. That came from when I was born. My great grandparents provided they gave me $10,000. I'll tell you the real number, right? They gave me $10,000 at birth, and they did the same thing for each of their great grandkids. And my parents had invested that money, so by the time I got ready to go to college, it was $50,000.
Nice.
No additional cash infusion. Now, I was really blessed from the sense of in the 80s with the huge inflation. So some of that stuff was making a flat bond interest rate, like guaranteed at 12%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, they could have invested in the stock market and it would have been at 20%, right, during those years. But whatever it was, right? But I was hugely blessed. And so from time to time, I would sit down with my dad and we'd open up the stock page of the newspaper right back then, and it's like, okay, we own this one and this one and this one. Like those are the ones. Like let's trend them over time. Like here's how you can see the values going up, and so we had like those dinner table conversations. Not a lot, but from time to time, I said, hey, look, this is your money. It's for college. But if you get scholarships and whatever, like it's your money after college. So you need to make sure that you spend it appropriately, and you can use it if you don't go to college. Like you can use it to buy a house or something. But we're not going to buy a car with it. We're not going to buy clothes and like basic everyday living kind of stuff with it.
Yeah. Awesome. So you had that experience from basically birth of like, hey, this is where this is the way things could work if you set it up correctly, and that's kind of been entrenched in your life. That's amazing. Cool. All right.
Yep.
So we talked about your past and your current world. Sort of, we're kind of like to current times, I feel. Can you give me a little more perspective of like what you're doing right now today? Like, what does that look like? Are you private money lending? Are you buying? You selling? You wholesaling? You sitting on your hands? What are you doing?
Yeah, I want to give you another big lesson.
All right, lessons are great.
The last 2 years. So I had 3 single family houses, and we've got all that. Like, sounds really great. We're now trying to do our own property management, and I'm not talking to. Anyways, I'm talking on the side, like not at work, right? Because it's all side hustle. At lunch, at night, and on the weekend, I'm doing this real estate thing. And one of the guys I talked to, he said, "Oh, like he's lives out of state," and he said, "You know, me and my cousins, we buy some real estate too." So we chat about it more and more, and said, let's partner together and let's buy something. We're doing a 1031 exchange. So anyways, we end up finding this duplex and triplex, and we bought it together as tenants in common. So I had an LLC, they have their LLC. They could not take the money out of that LLC because they're doing a 1031 exchange. And so we end up, and they cannot add me as a partner into their LLC either. So we did tenants in common. We both own 100%, but they have 80%, I have 20%. They put in 90% of the cash. I put in 10% of the cash plus provided the hustle. Does that make sense?
Sweet.
Really cool property. It was 5 studio apartments. And we walked in day one, and we use a hard money lender to finance most of it. We put in, I don't know, 100 grand in cash or something like that. And the remodeling company that we'd use on a couple flips, and we're like, hey, let's partner together. Okay, cool. Like, let's do it. I don't know how to swing the hammer. Like, that's your thing. He brought over 6 or 7 or 8 crew members that swing the hammer, plus his business knowledge of how to run the company. I can handle the finance, the back end, right? The bookkeepers and the technology thing. That's where I'm really good at. Okay, cool. except we finished the first 2 apartments, and the initial quote of $107,000 now became $207,000.
Wow.
Ouch. Like, why is that so different? Yeah, I know. So when we got the keys to all the units, one of the units we walked in and the place was vacant, and there were bugs everywhere. The little tiny roaches everywhere. Okay, the tenant moved out, left the place trashed. All right, I guess so now we need to do a deeper renovation than what we had initially planned on. And of course, the investors said, hey, I don't want to just put laminate countertops. Let's put a solid surface. And let's do a tile shower. Let's not do something cheap. Okay, cool. Well, those added a little bit. They did not add $100,000.
No.
I paid them directly for like the first 2 apartments. We got buy-in. Okay, the numbers still work. $200,000 or 208 or whatever it was to do all the apartments, including new siding and everything on both buildings. Absorb them. Now we end up using my LLC because it had been open for 2 years. And so there's benefits with things like business lines of credit or business credit cards, and being able to do like some of the other things. It's it gives you huge advantage just to have an LLC that's been open for more than 2 years. They don't care if it's being used. They don't care about the other stuff. Like, what's the open date? Is it more than 2 years? Yes. Okay. No. Then it's a no, right? You just close the door. So we use my LLC, and I also have great credit, and I've always paid our bills and right? And so we get Lowe's lines of like commercial line of credit and this and that, right? We're doing jobs not only for these apartments, but then we're also doing some external jobs like some bathrooms. And all of a sudden I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, we were supposed to make $6,000 on this job, but we're actually negative $3,000. And then another one's negative 10. Another one's negative 4. Another one's negative 1,000. I'm like, dude, like, what's happening here? Why are we so far off? Bill, we lost in 6 months. We lost $200,000. And it was $5,000 and $20,000. And these 5 apartments, they did not cost $200,000 that were supposed to cost $100,000. They cost $250,000. And then a 100-year-old house that we committed $100,000, and we had multiple other contractors that all said, look, it's going to be about $100,000. And the little handyman guy said it was going to be 30. And we're like, okay. I had a big spread on this thing. But we ended up spending $170 on it.
Whoa.
And after 6 months, like, everybody's got to go. Everybody. We're paying our labor by the hour, but we are quoting the jobs for a flat fee.
Huh.
Huge problem, especially when the labor team does not work and follow the number of hours that their leader says you've got this many days or this many hours to do this job. And so, like, when that guy left and I'm now managing personally, like, the labor crew, right? And I'm giving them it's me, because I'm calling people on their stuff. Hey, how are we losing? Like, go fix this. Go, like, address the labor. Switch them over to a cost, like, per job, not paying per hour. Yeah, like, and we're building these strategic relationships with this person and that person. And then some customers don't pay anything. They didn't put down a deposit, even though we're supposed to collect a 50% deposit. And then, hey, by the way, I know we're supposed to settle up at the end, but I just didn't. Or I didn't collect the final amount. Or it's like, holy smokes. Now that one leader leaves, and I'm reaching out and I'm talking to the labor crew. And they're like, I never believed any of the labor time. And then that we were given. It's totally unrealistic. David, I swing the hammer every day. You don't know, like, this guy just didn't know what he was talking about. Oh, okay. Well, tell me how much you quote for this. Right. And it's like double everything. And I'm reaching out to other peers. And they're like, no, that price is a fair price. Your labor crew, right? And the customers are saying, the labor crew is showing up late. They're leaving early. They're taking 2 and 3 hour lunches. They hang out and they create all these extra problems, which then creates more work for them. So it's like the opposite incentive. And we're on this bathroom job for this external customer, 45 minutes away. And I walk in, I'm like, why is the bathroom floor cut out? It wasn't supposed to, like, that wasn't part of the scope of work underneath the shower. Turns out the labor guy did not want to crawl underneath the house to switch the plumbing to PEX. And there was a rotten board or there was something. And so they just cut it out because he didn't want to crawl underneath the house.
Wow.
But he didn't have the wood to put it back. And so he just put a piece of drywall on top of the hole and left it for 2 weeks.
That's crazy. That's
And
total
they were
insanity.
there doing this or that. And they did stuff like they wadded up this big ball of duct tape and they put it on the drain hole of the shower to prevent extra drywall and dust and other stuff from getting inside the drain.
Yeah.
And it, clogging up the sewer line and all that stuff. Well, guess what? It was not properly vented. So then that ball of duct tape gets sucked down into the sewer line and it gets stuck.
Oh my God.
We find this out afterwards because the customer calls up at 9 o'clock at night. And I don't remember if it was that day or like the next day. I'm like, David, like, our water's backing up. It sounds horrible, like it smells horrible. We've got water backing up into the other toilet and into the other shower. And I'm like, we poured Drano and all this stuff down and it's not helping. Right. And so I call up a different guy who goes out there. He gets there at midnight, unclog stuff. He's like getting Drano in his face and like, oh, terrible. Right. And the sewer stuff. Right. I mean, all over him. He's like covered head to toe in stuff. Right. Can't find it. The customer hires a plumber. The plumber comes out and finds this big ball of duct tape and pulls it out right where the sewer line for the house like goes in. It goes through a T or something and the sewer line gets a little bit smaller. Well, that ball gets stuck there.
Oh no.
Anyways, he's able to retrieve this thing, get it out, everything.
Wow.
Like the customer pays the whatever the plumber fee is. But guess what? Now we're not going to make that mistake. We're not going to, like, we're going to put a proper cap on the sewer line or use something. We're not going to wad up a bunch of plastic and like stick it in the thing. Which is totally, like, everyone does that.
Wow. That's a crazy story. So what's the quick 30-second takeaway from like that whole experience with that triplex or the triplex and the duplex and like this contractor partnership? Like, what's the 30-second takeaway that people can take?
It is when we're doing remodeling, you really need to price. You have to align the pricing with your subs and with your vendors with the price that your customer's paying. And if you don't, you are personally taking the risk of whatever that spread is.
So the quote was different than the quote to the customer was different than the quote from the contractor. Like one was the contractor quote wasn't being referenced for the quote for the customer. So they were almost inversely related.
Exactly, because we were paying our labor crew by the hour, and the customer was paying us for the job.
Yeah, okay. There it is. Make sure, okay. Pay per job, right? Performance payments.
Or everything has to be variable cost, or everything has to be fixed cost. Or you have to be super in touch with your cost on a daily and weekly basis that you could pull the trigger, and you've got a trigger that says, hey, this is out of whack. Now I need to do a change order, or I have to make an adjustment before it goes horribly wrong.
Got it. Okay. Wow. That's quite a lesson. I'm glad you came back and brought that together for us. We've got a few more minutes here. So the last thing I want to really understand is what are your future goals? Like what is David 2024 and a half look like?
Yes. So about 7-8 months ago, God worked it out perfectly so I could leave Wells Fargo.
Nice.
And so I no longer have a W-2 job. I ended up, God just works it out in a way that God can only work things out, right? So I can do real estate 100% now.
Nice.
And so I'm like, okay, we're not going to repeat those same mistakes, and we're going to build things out so it's very systematic. There's clear tracking and traceability, and we're going to continue to vertically integrate across the real estate space. So my goal is I want to be buying lots of properties. Well, in order to buy lots of properties, the thing that has held us almost hostage was the remodeling side, which is why we wanted to build our own remodeling company. And that way I can control the material costs, the labor costs, the scheduling. There's been times on some of these jobs where we're using a hard money lender, and it's a 12-month loan, and then it's super expensive to extend it for 3 more months or 6 more months. Really, really expensive. Not just from the re-up fee, but also the interest rate is really high. And so if we cannot control that timing and the scheduling in the finished product delivery, it makes it just creates like this huge additional unknown factor in the underwriting numbers when we're going to buy a property. And so I said, okay, if that's our biggest hurdle right now, we're going to focus 100% on our remodeling company. And then we'll finish dialing in like the last little bit for the property management side. And then we'll go build a wholesaling arm and a financing arm to get private money lenders and institutional investors, or right, the whole money side. And so let's vertically integrate. The goal is to create this engine that's acquiring properties. Third, fourth quarter, we're going to start buying properties again, one every other month, one a month, 2, 3. The goal is by the end of 2025, we're executing and acquiring 5 properties a month.
Nice.
But you can only start acquiring at that volume if you've got really effective systems and processes, and you know exactly what your cost is, what your delivery dates are. You can control the schedule, right? I can control the asset and the asset management through the property manager. We've got good deal flow coming in the front. And so the last 6 months, I'm like really trying to pour into this remodeling company. And we've got great single source software. It's like this and that. And like, how do you price this? How do you, and this is where I'm currently struggling. How do you, like, what's the price to a retail customer? And what's the price, like the cost side, that we should charge as a remodeling company to an external customer at retail, or to an investor like us, especially us, right, at a lower margin. How is it priced? Like per square foot, per linear foot, per whatever. And then what are the exact materials that goes into that job? For a remodeling company, I'm like, it costs us $100 when someone has to leave the job site and go to Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever store to pick up anything, plus whatever you buy, right? Lost productivity. The person has to pack up their stuff. They have to clean up enough. They have to leave the job site. They have to come back, right? All those things. About $100. So now it doesn't take that many items to say, okay, if I want to stock that job site in that supplier with $1,000 or $5,000 worth of materials, it doesn't take that many $100 trips to Lowe's to get that return on investment. So how can we send job supplies and stuff to the job site that handles those weird things that are unexpected? You open the wall and then you need one more connector. You need this extra elbow, or now I need a 2x4 that I didn't really expect, or these other weird screws, or I mean, there's a million little things depending upon what it is.
Yeah.
And every time it's like, okay, it's another $100 purchase at Lowe's or $150 for this or that, plus the time to go and buy these extra materials that were not in the original quote.
Mm-hmm.
And we're already adding a 10% unknown factor. But then what happens when it's 20 or 30% because the labor crew did not really think enough about the weird stuff? They just run to Lowe's and grab it, you know?
Right.
So can we provide job site supply buckets? And what does that look like? And then can we do our material purchasing really, really smart? So when we're hanging drywall, how do we know what supplier to buy drywall from? So can we create a way that we can compare the price of drywall at Lowe's? I'm going to be off a little bit, but I understand the concept. A sheet of drywall at Lowe's, half-inch white drywall, might be $12, and Home Depot it's $14. And maybe someplace else it might be a different price. But I have a 10% discount at Lowe's. I do not have that at Home Depot, which is really like what that difference is.
Sure.
But how do I do that price comparison to say my standard item is from Lowe's, not from Home Depot? So if there's a chance that, unless there's a really good reason to buy it from Home Depot, we're going to buy sheets of drywall from Lowe's, and we're going to buy all of our PEX plumbing stuff from Amazon, and our cabinet screws and knobs and pulls from Amazon. And I'm going to buy a 60 pack or a 200 pack. And light fixtures are from Amazon. And Lowe's is great on standard lumber, but then 84 lumber is cheaper on anything that's not really, really standard. If it's not 2x4s, 4x4s, sometimes sheets of plywood can go either way. If it's a weird dimension, if it's anything else, then 84 lumber is cheaper. Right? And so how do I know what that is, where to purchase it? Now I've got a very detailed list, and I know what my cost is, and I know the item numbers and the cost from each supplier. So now I can quote it really, really accurately. And I can use that quote to then go buy it and deliver it to the job site, and the labor crew can just show up.
Nice.
But how do you do that? I still don't know.
Good question.
I started building out this big Excel spreadsheet, and I've got, 50 columns wide. And I think this week we're now over 1,000 items. And they're all categorized and grouped, and I can sort on drywall and sub categories and find all these different things. There's a lot of work still to do. But now, if you spend the time going category by category, and then you say, okay, I need drywall, I can filter on that selection and know, okay, here's the exact items from these exact suppliers to go buy it from.
Nice. So you do 90% of the work up front, and it saves you a ton of time repetitively for each additional time that you do that job.
Yes.
Nice.
And we have a standard item, right? So now it's rinse and repeat. I don't have to figure out what kind of this or what kind of that part.
Yeah.
It's here's the full list of the full material list, and now we just go execute.
Awesome. I love it. Dude, that's an amazing goal to get. It sounds like you have a lot of work, but you've already done a lot of work. So, we're at the end of our time here. We're 7 minutes over, but this has been awesome. Where are you guys buying?
We are in the Hickory, North Carolina area. So it's about an hour northwest of Charlotte. And it's an amazing market.
Cool.
It's kind of off the beaten path, but it's still a pretty decent sized city. In the 4-county area, there's several 100,000 people that all commute to the greater Hickory area for shopping and sports and restaurants and kind of all those things. And then they expand out to their wherever they live in the 4-county area. So it's a really cool market, and it's growing and expanding, and there's massive growth right now, and we're getting a lot of population movement from the Charlotte area. And as people are moving to North Carolina, Hickory's very investable, and it's affordable. Now, I say that, and it's becoming less affordable, right?
That's how it works.
That first house we bought for $87,000, we had 100 in it. We sold it 2 weeks ago for $195,000.
Pretty good.
And I got a check for $95,000. How awesome is that?
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Awesome. So I'm going to put your details in the description of the YouTube video. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, I'll give them your email and your phone number, or you got a website, whatever it is. We'll just stick it in there. So I'm going to cut this off. It's been a pleasure. Stay with me, and give me a second here.
Yeah. Bill, let me give you one more thing real quick. If anyone, I'm currently looking for here's what I need is I need help with our remodeling company finishing up and dialing in the exact materials across these different specialties. How do you quote it? What's our cost as a remodeling and investor, and what's the cost to the customer or the investor? And really dial in those specifics.
So you need help really understanding the cost versus the retail side of it / the investor side, and what that margin and spread looks like at a normal rate.
Exactly. So I'm going to have the material list of exactly what's needed when we hang drywall and finish it. But it's not priced per the material list. I need to pay $4 a sheet, or X dollars a sheet, right? For the install and the material, and so the material might be $17 when you include the mud and the sanding pads and that kind of stuff. And then it might be $10 for the labor to hang per sheet. But my numbers are off, right? So that's $27, and then we sell it for $35 a sheet, or we sell it to the customer for $40 a sheet. Well, now my sales guy can go out to a customer's house, and he can measure it, and he can say $40 a sheet times 5 sheets, $2,000, and he can close the sale on the spot, write up the contract. Customer can say yes, and we can go ahead and start scheduling it.
Amazing.
Otherwise, you have to go back, and it takes a couple days or a couple weeks to gather all the materials and add a markup and add and then you lose the sale because it's just time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not predictable.
So you're looking for somebody to help you shortcut that knowledge.
Yes.
Awesome.
And systematize to impact and help the industry. to help the rest of the people in the sub 2 community, to help, like, let's share the material list. Like, how do you systematize it, make it easy for anybody that's new or experienced, right?
Cool.
How do you have a really informed, really detailed purchasing strategy and delivery to the job site?
I love it.
That's it.
All right.
I love
Anybody?
it. I love some help, love some partnership. Let's figure it out together. I love to be a go-giver. Let's give, and we all win.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Stay with me real quick. I'm going to end this.
Perfect.